Good evening. This is a public meeting of the Lowell Zoning Board of Appeals for October 26, 2015. Tonight we have two matters before us, and before we get started, if everyone could check your electronic device, make sure it's either turned off or turned down so we don't have any interruptions. Additionally, if you plan on speaking on behalf of a petition, I would like you to sign in at the podium with your name and address before addressing the board. Our first matter before us is under new business, is ZB 2015-36. The petition's a special permit. The applicant is Smith Kids LLC. The property is located at 1582 Middlesex Street, and the petition's a special permit approval for the retrofit of existing office space for the purposes of operating an automotive sales business. The proposed project is located in the Regional Retail Zoning District and requires special permit approval under Article 12, Table of Uses of the Lowell Zoning Ordinance. Is there a representative here for Smith Kids LLC?
May I step in and leave some documents for you people to look at?
Absolutely, Counselor.
Chairman, member of the board, my name's Philip Nyman, and I'm representing the applicant here. Just by way of background, my client's name is Phil Smith. He's a Chelmsford native who spent a lot of time in Lowell. He was a golfer, and he has, but in addition to being a used car owner, he has played golf a number of years. He has been off and on winning the city golf tournament. He's 43, he's married, he has 3 great children. He was a golf pro for 11 years, played at Mount Pleasant. He has 2 daughters who also play golf, one of whom is just the most charming young woman in the world and can really hit the driver. He has a car dealership in North Chelmsford. He has one in Lowell and Centerville, and he'd like to purchase the thrifty. He's not going to purchase it. He's going to rent it, and it's going to be a 5-year rental, and it's the former Thrifty car lot on Middlesex Street. I've given you a picture of the Thrifty, and I'm showing it to you on the front. It's on Middlesex Street, notwithstanding the fact that the plan we gave you said Middlesex Road. It is Middlesex Street, and it's on the corner of, it's on Middlesex and, what's the other street? I can't remember. Caleb. And Caleb Street, and it's been a car business dealership for a number of years. Thrifty's gone out, my client is going in. There's going to be very little, if any, remodeling of the exterior of the building. The only thing that's going to happen on the outside is the Thrifty sign will be taken out. My client tells me it's one of those signs that you push up, that will come out, and he's going to put up a comparable sign that will say, Phil Smith Car Sales. On the plan that we filed with you and on the one that I gave you this evening, you'll notice that there are a number, we list the number of cars that are going to be on the lot, and you will see that on Caleb Street, there will be 2 customer parking lots. And the entrance will not be on Middlesex Street. The entrance will be on Caleb Street. At some point, there will be, where the entrance is, there will be a ramp put up for handicap access. There will be no entrance on Middlesex Street. There will be no parking on the sidewalk. There will be no driving on the sidewalk. There will be no business carried on there. Based upon our examination, based upon the review, all of the requirements of the zoning district are complied with. And we meet every requirement of the zoning board, the zoning bylaw, the ordinance, and respectfully, we're asking your permission for a special permit. After the special permit is obtained, we will be recording, and after the 21 days, hopefully, when you grant us the decision, we will then be applying for a second-class license to sell used cars. Are there any questions?
I don't have any questions at this point, Counselor. If there's nothing else you want to add, I'll open it up to the public, and then we'll move it to the board.
Let me just sign my name and... Phil, why don't you sign underneath mine?
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to open it up to the public. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? In favor? Favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Amy Hughes, and I've been a resident of Lowell for 19 years, and I've lived on Caleb Street for 19 years.
Okay. What address are you, ma'am?
20 Caleb.
20 Caleb.
I'm the third house in. In the 19 years we've been here, there have been numerous businesses, all of them car dealerships or car rentals. None of them have succeeded, and they've all been terrible neighbors. I have pictures, too, that I'd like to give you.
Sure.
Our biggest question is if they are going to have 20 cars there, plus cars for employees, if we have another winter like we just had, where are they going to put all these cars when they plow? Because our street is congested as it is, and there's nowhere to park them. My sister-in-law lives right across the street from it, and they have parked in her driveway before. They've parked at Don and Katie's hair salon before. They've plowed snow into Don and Katie's hair salon parking lot. We've caught them. That's our biggest question, but also the fence there is a mess. It's a horrible looking business, and if they can tell me that they're gonna clean it up and not make our neighborhood look so horrible, then I wouldn't be so against this. Between the fence and the trash, I go in there and clean up the trash because the landlord never does, ever, ever. And we can't stand it. And some of the pictures show our actual street. USAVE used to wash their cars in their lot. The water would go down their parking lot and down our street, and because of the way our street goes, the water just sat at the end of our driveway. And you can see pictures of our driveway. It's all a mess. It needs to be redone. I had to keep calling the city to come and repatch because the asphalt is just cracked, broken, missing pieces, and it just keeps happening. We don't need another used car lot on Middlesex Street in that area. Within a quarter mile, there's 6 of them. It's just, are we gonna become the auto mile? You know, it just, it just doesn't look nice. I think that was it. So we're against it. I've spoken with my other neighbors who couldn't make it, and they are not for it either. And I think Patty's going to talk. Oh. But that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Attorney Nyman, do you want to respond at all
Yes,
at this point?
I'd like to respond. I understand the concern, and I want you to know that my client has run 2 used car dealerships, one in North Chelmsford, one in Lowell. The one in Lowell is up off Aiken Avenue. It's near a residential address. We have not had any problems with respect to any of the allegations that this young woman is this woman is making that existed there in our other Lowell location. My client isn't even in there. My client has not brought any of the turmoil that the person has objected to. That's not the way my client operates. My client is prepared, knows how many cars he's going to have. The parking will be well-maintained. There will be customer parking. We will not be disturbing Middlesex Street. The one nice thing about my client is if there are cars in excess of what we are going to get a special permit for, the neighbors ought not worry, because with the facilities at my other client's location, he's not in the business of having an unruly operation. So he has other places to go to bring them to his 2 other locations. He has a lot of parking in North Chelmsford, and he has 2 lots in the other Lowell location. My client's been in business a long time. He's well aware of how you run a neat, orderly business, and I don't think that the tenant is going to have any problem. On the other hand, if there is a problem, I think this is my client. He's here. His name's Mr. Smith. Let the client, let her come in, let her talk to him, and I assure you that she will be accommodated. With respect to plowing, my client is going to have to make sure that Caleb Street is plowed because of the fact that that will be the entrance and exit to the location. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to remain in business. If there are problems, at least give my client the opportunity to solve them and not even to create them. I don't know anything about Thrifty. I don't know what kind of an operation they ran, but I do know the kind of operation my client runs, and quite frankly, we've never had a problem. I don't know how else I can. If there is something wrong with a fence, we've shown you pictures. My client wants to run a neat operation. First of all, we will attend to that fence, and we will make sure that that fence is repaired. With respect to the sidewalk on Middlesex Street, we were given requests and comments that had to be given to you people before the meeting. We intend to be able to talk to the city to try to work out those problems. With respect to landscaping, once the season comes, the spring, my client is going to deal with the landscaping and try to make the place be better. She's right. There are a lot of used car dealerships on Middlesex Street. This has always been a used car dealership. And hopefully my client will be an example of a good quality used car operator on Middlesex Street. I don't know what else I can say specifically. other than we care, and we're not the least bit interested in having neighbors not want us in the neighborhood.
So, Mr. Nyman, maybe two things if either you or your client can explain to us. So regarding the cleaning of the lot during the winter time for snow, what would be the plan? How would you remove the cars, do your plowing, and put the cars back? And then I believe this woman had a second comment regarding the cleaning of the vehicles. Obviously, this board hasn't seen vehicles cleaned and water running down the street, but maybe your client could also explain what the process would be for washing the vehicles and what would be the process again for, mitigating any water runoff that would go down Caleb Street.
Could you speak on that, Mr. Smith?
Well, on the cleaning of the cars, excuse me, everything is, would be subbed out. And we have a location off of Tanner Street that does the cleaning, so basically when the cars get to our location, it's ready to go. It doesn't have to be cleaned. And
Okay.
if we do have to clean it, we run it through maybe St. Hilaire's Car Wash, or we have one in North Chelmsford that we use. In the snow removal, we're actually making plans that we would be pushing it into the corner, and then if it got too busy or too high, like we had times last year, we would have a dump trucks come in and remove it. Where that was our game plan.
But as far as moving, like if you're going to move the vehicles, obviously you're going to have, if I look at the plans, the number of vehicles you have are going to pretty much take up the that whole area and back, all the hard top is. If you're going to be putting your snow up and back there, obviously you're going to have to move your vehicles around to get to the snow. What's the plan to get them, off your lot so you can plow it out? Do you need to? Are you going to be using Caleb Street to line them up? I mean, what is the plan there?
Depending upon the size of the snowstorm,
Yep.
we have room at a location in North Chelmsford. We'd probably empty it and then bring them back would be the easiest. If it was going to be a
Right.
20-plus inch storm, if it was going to be 2 or 3 inches, we'd probably try to move them to facing the building to the right, clear at the back, then move them back to that side and push from the other side, depending upon the size of the storms.
And approximately, what's the distance to your North Chelmsford facility?
In mileage, I'd say probably 1.5 miles.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I just 2 points. The abutter had a question. I just wanted to see what your plans were for both of those. Okay. Thank you. All right. We're going to open it up to the board. Van.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the applicant, I always think it's a good thing when businesses, especially people who've owned and operated businesses, expand or continue to stay in Lowell. Middlesex Street, especially this corridor, this district is kind of a big business district, and as we all know, that whole area has a bunch of car dealerships, and so I do believe that another car dealership or a car place would actually fit right in. To the claims of existing problems and issues with current and past businesses has been there. I think we want to give the opportunity to the new business owner who's been a successful business person to operate a well-run business. So overall, I think this neighborhood or this district fits in well with this particular business, especially. I do feel for the neighbors, but I think Mr. Smith said he will address issues or problems that arrive from snow or water runoff. So I like to see a successful business person come in and kind of redo this whole kind of lot and just make it a nice, presentable business, and that works well with the neighborhoods. So I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully you do well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Van. Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the sentiments of Van with regards to new business coming in. The area is conducive to similar businesses, and it seems to be conducive with the area, and I understand the sentiments of the abutting neighbors and their concerns. But the one thing I am kind of concerned about, and I just don't know, Mr. Nyman, if you can speak to this. I mean, 20 space, you had it planned out for 20 spaces. It seems a little bit too much possibly for me. Is that, can you speak to, you or your client speak to that? Is that the plan off the bat, is just to fill it all in and go with that? Or is there some other, there's 20 spaces, 20 cars seems a lot for 7,400 feet.
Excuse
Sorry,
me,
can you just come up
Mr.
to
Smith,
the-
if you could address the board from the lectern, that'd be appreciated.
What's his question? About the 20 cars, he thought it was a little excessive.
I can't answer what's excessive. It conforms to the zoning. It will enable my client to operate, and it will enable my client to be able to pay his bills. It's not going to be overcrowded. It's not going to be, there's going to be space in between. And yes, it's more cars than you might expect, but it's not what would be considered excessive. He has a lot in Lowell that I think has 14 or 16 cars. If the cars are crowded in a way that affects business, then there will be fewer cars there because it'll affect the quality of the business. So I don't know how else I can answer it, except it's a good, it will enable him to be able to operate effectively without causing any damage. I mean, these are pretty good cars. These aren't junks.
No, I understand, and I've seen Mr. Smith's other facilities, and he does have a good product that he has on his other facilities. And I'm just 20 seems like it's conducive. It's very small space, but if you say it's not, it's doable, then I don't know. I'd have to go with your word on that. It just seems very compact, but. That's all I really had, but thank you very much. I wish you the best of luck. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. Dennis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just have a few questions. But I do like the idea of a business operating here that is somewhat compatible with the street, and there is a lot of these vehicle sales operations already there, so it does seem to have merit to fit in. The package that you submitted, I'm trying to understand what you have for a product on display. So there's a plan here that shows 20 parking spaces for vehicles. Are those all vehicles that are going to be for sale?
I think it's less than that, aren't there?
I think it's 20 with the two customers.
It's 18 cars for sale with 2 spaces for customer parking. And yes, whatever is on the lot other than the customer parking will be for sale. But there's something different in my client's operation than if this were just a straight used car lot. My client has a vehicle repair shop about a mile or 2 away in another section of Lowell. So that we're not going to be, again, he told you how he was going to clean the cars and maintain them, but there will be cars not there that will be repaired and will be not necessarily on the site. So it'll be a lot less, there won't be junks, there won't be bad cars, there won't be noisy cars. I don't know how else I can explain it to you, but yes, the answer to your question is, except for the 2 spaces which will be used for parking, the other 18 cars will be for sale.
I think the site plan that we are looking at is for 22 spaces, and it has 20 spaces listed, and then 2 CS1 and CS2, so it's 22 spaces shown on the site plan. And so my understanding is that there's 20 spaces for sale, and 2 additional spaces for customer parking. The 20 spaces that are for sale, as shown, include the employee parking, is that correct?
Just went by it.
Here's the 2. So there'll be 20 spaces for sale. Yes, you're right. There are 20 for sale, and there are 2 that are customer parking.
And the 20 spaces for sale include employee parking, is that correct? Is employee parking counted here? Where are the employees parking?
They would take one of the cars home and back out of the 20.
So one of the 20 spaces is an employee car.
Correct, because that car would also be for sale.
And so whether it's 1 or 2 employees, they're coming out of the 20. So there's 22 spaces total that we're looking at. Okay. Now, we talked a little bit about snow storage, and you mentioned about the back corner would be a place where you would push the snow until it became too big a amount of snow, and then you'd be trucking it off the site. Where's the back corner that you're talking about pushing the snow to?
If you look at the plan that I gave you, it looks square in the right-hand corner. If you look at the photograph, you will see the right rear goes off on an angle, and that is where I believe the snow will be stored and left as possibly. If that occurs, then there will be less vehicles available for sale until the lot is cleared off. But if you'll notice where that angle goes around near the fence, near the next door neighbor, that's where he's talking about. Hopefully to the right rear, there will be space for snow.
Okay, so the snow is going to be stored in the right rear and displacing maybe 3 or 4 parking spaces for cars for sale. So you're going to be decreasing your parking car, your count for sale cars while the snow is stored. Is that what we're saying? We're losing 1 or 2 parking spaces while the snow is stored there? Is that right?
Hopefully, the cars, if there's not enough room for the cars to be stored because of snow, they will be removed to either the North Chelmsford store or to the other Lowell store.
You only have a 3-foot dimension between the edge of parking spaces and the property line. So there's no snow storage in that back corner. So, no substantial snow storage without displacing parking spaces. So I just want to get it clear as to what you're saying for the snow storage. Unless I'm misunderstanding something.
Have you seen the large plan that was submitted when the application was made?
Yep.
Okay, if you look at that plan, and you look coming from Middlesex Street, going around to the right, that's where hopefully the snow will be taken care of in that part of the building. Is that correct? Right around here. The cars would be moved here and you move them back.
Well, we move the cars here and we push them back.
Right, okay, that's what
And
we're
if we're in
saying.
this corner here, we'd have to take 20 and 19, we'd have to take them to North Chelmsford.
Okay, what we're
then
saying is
we
the
had an
cars
overload
for
of
the
snow.
snow would be moved in the lot area closer to the front. On this plan that I gave you, it's a triangular shaped area. So the cars would be moved out there
I
while
think
we're
his
cleaning.
His question is though, if we put all the snow here,
Yeah.
where would those cars go? And I'd have, if 19 and 20 were full of snow, we'd have to move them to North
Then they
Chelmsford.
would, and I thought I said that, they'd have to be moved off the lot. They would not be thrown on the street, and they would not be allowed to be there where it could affect the neighbors. If there is too much snow and we haven't pulled it out, or, you know, then we're gonna have to remove some cars. And if, in order to remove the cars, we're gonna have to do it to keep the neighborhood.
Part of the confusion is that you don't have snow storage listed on the site as a location right now, so we're guessing at it. So it'd be good to have snow storage identified on the site plan, so that we could understand what your intention is for snow storage, right? So there's confusion here. I'm sorry, but I don't see snow storage listed here. The next one is landscaping. The site is without any green space, I think, at all. I think it's paved 100% to the property line in all edges. And so there's interest in seeing the site beautified and see landscaping. What is your intention? There's a comment that you had given back to the city that you'll get to it sometime in the spring when the weather breaks, but that doesn't really give me an understanding as to what your intention is. That just is an idea that you'll get to it sometime in the future.
What's the answer to that? Do you have an answer for that?
Check with the landlord and see what he would like us to do.
And what does he want us to do? What was he saying? No, him.
Just have some environmental, some tree work or some plants.
Oh, okay. I believe we did indicate in our response that come the spring, we would explore some sort of environmental issue to make the area more attractive. We can't do it now, and we don't have the plan now. We're not in there. We're coming into the winter. So what we're conceding is that, yes, we will do something, but the whole lot's not going to be a green belt. Hopefully, we'll be able to put some trees or shrubs to make it more attractive, to conform with the requirements that were set forth by the city when they sent us the question.
Okay, but we should have an understanding as to your plan for where you're intending to put the landscaping. We don't have a plan submitted. I understand that we're going into the winter, but we don't have a plan developed for where the landscaping is intended to go.
And we don't have that plan, Mr. McCarthy, and if I told you we did, I'd be misrepresenting. So because we haven't been in there, what we're basically saying is we're committed to working with the city to try to make a plan to put in some landscaping. But respectfully, sir, we haven't got it now. And until we get in there, until we see how it's going to work, and until we see the mechanics,
Yep.
we don't have one.
Okay, you made a reference to handicapped accessibility and providing a handicapped accessible office environment here. What's your intention for adding the ramp? Is that a ramp that you're putting in? And where would the ramp go?
Tell them where we think it's going to go. Hopefully it's going to go at the front, at the entrance, which would be on Caleb Street. My client is also indicated that he's going to explore developing another ramp so there would be access to the rear.
Okay. And when would the ramp be constructed? When would we have accessibility for this operation? Would that be upon occupancy, or is that going to be down the road?
What's the answer to that? You're going in here, right? We're going in here, so we're going to be in here. So hopefully the ramp will be on Caleb Street where the stairs are. And hopefully that's where we'd like to explore putting the ramp in. We recognize that we have to comply with the environment, and we want to make something of it. We want to comply with the handicap law, but we don't have it now, sir. But we know by law we have to have it.
I'm not sure if that's the case. Joe, do you know if we have an existing condition operating if they can go into this existing condition without meeting handicap accessibility?
I'm not entirely sure, but we could get the building commissioner to weigh in on that if you'd like.
I'm not sure if you have a change in use, that's one thing, but I don't think you have a change in use in this facility because they're going from a automotive operation to an automotive operation, I think. So,
Right, the use probably wouldn't be
not a change in
changed.
use, so I don't think you're going to trigger ADA, even though you should. But I don't think you trigger that from, so I don't know if you will be required to, but I know that it would be great if you did.
But even if we're not required, we intend to do it.
Good, when?
As soon as we can get, as soon as you'll give us our approval so that we can get into the property, so that we could start to be tenants in the property, so that we then can realize what it's doing. And if there is something in your allowance of our request that we should have a handicapped exit, that would be a condition of the
Okay.
grant of the special permit to which we want to apply. And we want to comply with that, Mr. McCarthy.
Good. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just a couple quick questions. As it relates to the fence, is that your fence to repair? Is that part of that property?
Do you know the
Well,
fence?
the
This must be with their
personal, I'm leasing from the other piece of property also. So it'd be his fence, he owns both parcels.
Okay.
The fence is,
Yeah, the chain link fence.
right back there.
there's two fences, there's one in between the Chinese food restaurant.
And here,
the
and then there's one in the
I
rear.
think it's the back fence that they might be talking about.
Okay.
And who I'm leasing this from actually owns that house also.
Okay.
So it's gotta be his fence one way or the other, depending on whose property it's on.
Okay, just to clarify for the abutter who referenced the fence, may the abutter approach to respond to the fence to which you were referring to? Ma'am? That fence you were referring to, were you referring to the chain link fence or the rear fence?
The wooden fence.
The wooden fence,
I'm not the abutter, I live on that street.
Okay.
I have to look at it.
okay. All right, thank you. So would that be your fence to repair or is that the ownership of the home and the ownership of the property is the same? Would they be in kind to repairing that fence?
I can only tell you that we would request
Okay.
that the landlord repair the fence if that's something that would disturb the neighborhood.
Okay.
But based on what we've looked at on the plan that we presented, it doesn't appear to be on our lot, it appears to be on the back lot.
Okay.
But I mean, it makes sense, we're not looking to run a
Okay,
low-grade used car operation.
There's no suggestion other than was presented as former complaints invalid, and Mr. Smith moving forward in his business occupancy in one site in Lowell and another in Chelmsford. We'd have to recognize his professionalism and intent to move forward, and this member certainly does. Just as a clarification on the snow, you said in regards to placing the snow essentially in the lot parking spot 1920, and the remainder of the cars would be moved to the triangular. That's be an existing temporary solution? If all cars were moved to another site, they'd have to go back to their original spot, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And what was your thought in regards to removable height of snow? And I'm being optimistic, saying that we don't get as much as we did last year. Do you have a height in which you would start removing that from? 4 feet, 7 feet?
Basically becomes on what you can work with and what you can't.
Okay.
If it becomes unworkable, a dump truck comes in, a front-end loader lifts it, takes it out, and then we have the spots back. I mean, last year, I think we did it 3 or 4 times. Other winters, it's been 0. Some winters, it's really all depends on how much snowfall there is.
Do you have a pragmatic, calculated height in which you would make a common?
It also depends on how Since
Okay.
we have not plowed that lot out, how tidy you can make where you push the snow into.
We're not gonna see 20-foot mounds as we do when we drive by Market Basket on 38,
Correct.
close to my home,
Maybe
correct?
Then we are unable to work with mounds like that,
Okay.
or build them.
Yeah, because they become safety measures.
Correct, yeah,
You
because
know.
you get the kids running
Your
on.
kids wanna go up and down them and, sliding into the vehicles and things of that nature, so. Just one final question, as it relates to the issue they're gonna be dealing with the city in regards to the sidewalk, that's the existing piece right on the front issuance, it's on Middlesex Street, that, right under the stairs? It
We
seems
have
as though-
no idea what would, the question that was posed to us related to the sidewalk, I believe, on Middlesex Street.
Right,
We intend to put signs on Middlesex Street that will not allow, that will state this is not for parking, this is not an entrance, and that will keep cars from coming on to the property on Middlesex Street or parking there. And we will have adequate parking and adequate signage to make sure that doesn't happen.
as I look at the very first photograph that you presented to us tonight, if you, through you, Mr. Chairman, I would like a condition that would not become a parking spot for employees, visitors, and the like. If you look at the very front of this front photo, there seems to be a little spot there.
The right of the staircase.
Right to the right of the staircase.
this what he's talking
I'm sure over the course of time, previous, it may have become a convenient measure of parking. I think that's probably why that sidewalk is in disrepair. But I would like to see a condition that that particular area would not be used for any type of parking, permanent and/or temporary and/or reassigned.
My client indicates to me that he doesn't believe you could put a car there.
Now, I believe his professional recommendation, but I also have a memory of seeing cars stacked to that stair line on several occasions, going to youth soccer at Edwards Field.
The one, like, right to the right of the staircase.
Yeah, they're banging on the
I remember
side.
a car that's there over the
Yep, well,
time.
they're banging on the side, it's just point of interest as we break down this entire space, so. Those questions others have satisfied my thoughts at this point. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Gary. What's the traffic flow going to be on the site? You got an entrance on Caleb, you got an entrance on Middlesex, correct? What's
No,
the-
there's there'll be no entrance on Middlesex.
None.
No, sir.
So as far as, I guess I'm going to call it customer parking, so Joe, they're showing 2 spots, CS 1 and 2, right? Does that fulfill the need of zoning?
Yes, it's one space for every 15 one
Yep.
customer space for every 15 display vehicles is the zoning requirement.
And the reason why I asked about the flow, I assumed you weren't coming in off Middlesex Street. I mean, as far as you're showing 2 spots, if business becomes successful, which, I'm sure you're hoping, I have a little bit of a concern where customers are going to park if there's only 2 parking spots. Now, Joe just answered the question, you meet the criteria for the parking, and we'll call it even off-street. But on your plan, on the right-hand side where you show space number 14, so you have all this open, I'm going to call it open area down on the side here. In fact, you even, on page, well,
is on
it's
the
your
back.
second page of your handout tonight.
Yeah, it's on the side.
You're going to leave that whole space open on the right-hand side? Is that the plan? You're just going to show
Talking that.
parking spot number 14, and
What are you
that's going to
gonna
be
put
it?
in here? Is this gonna be open space?
Yeah, what is it? I would think so, because everything would be out back.
The answer is, my client says he would think so, because everything else will be out back.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious, is there any opportunity to have a little bit more parking for customers on the right-hand side of the building, where it shows number 14?
Yeah, I mean, there would be space for cars there.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to mitigate people parking on Caleb Street. I mean, hey,
I
you start
see.
doing a bang-up business,
Yep.
where are people gonna park? They're gonna park on Caleb, I'm sure. Now, I don't expect they're gonna park there for 8 hours a day.
But people will be coming in off of Caleb.
Correct.
Coming down to the rear, to that would be the rear when you talk about Caleb. So yes, there will be space, and yes, if a car can fit in there and park there, that, we will allow that. I guess the answer is yes.
Yep.
And my client is going to run a good operation. And if people can't park there, or if it's not going to be effective, then he's not going to make a living, and he's not going to be able to sell cars. So once he gets in there, and once we see what it's like in a snowstorm, and once my client sees what it's like with respect to parking and effectiveness, he will then use business good sense to make it an operational business. And until he's allowed in there to do it, we can't, I guess we can't answer the questions specifically. But you've just said something that makes very good sense. When they come in off, say, on Caleb Street, they would go to that, what we call the Lot 14. And that area may have space for 1 or 2 cars, which would be used for customers coming in if the 2 customer parking spaces are not available.
Yeah, I'm just
And,
asking the
and
question.
I appreciate what you're saying is, and what you're doing is giving us an education.
Yep.
And suggestions that I think are very good ones.
Yeah, because if I look at the plan, and, if we wanted to make this even Steven, I'd almost say, well, why do we have numbers 14 and 15? But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm asking is, you're showing a spot 14, which to me is putting 1 more parking spot off to the right there, just to have another spot. What I'm looking at is, I have a concern for the neighborhood for parking. I want Mr. Smith to be successful, but if people are showing up and they start parking all over the place, it's just, I'm trying to mitigate any potential problems. So I guess what I'm asking you, sir, is, are you willing, or is it a possibility we could add a couple more spots in there?
Space-wise.
And if we can add a couple more spots, we would have to show, we're gonna have to revise these plans anyways, because the board has already come up with a couple of where the snow is gonna go. The plan's gonna have to be revised anyways if we get down to that path. I'm just asking the question, is there a possibility of adding at least 2 more parking spots? Customer parking.
There's plenty of space there for 2 more cars.
Okay. So I guess what I would, and Joe, I don't think there's, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if they need to be against the chain link fence where, like number 14 is, or if one can be the chain link, one can be against the building.
Could you get rid of
Probably wouldn't want it against the building. Probably be better to have it towards the chain link fence, just to get 2 more spots.
You could have the parking laid out in that manner. I'm trying to understand your question. If you're asking if all the customer parking spaces have to be together in one place, is that kind of what you're hinting at?
No.
Okay.
I've asked the petitioner if they're willing to add 2 more customer spots. Can they put it anywhere on the plan, or is it preferable to keep it away from the building and, I'll say, put them next to spot number 14?
We can certainly review any layout that would have them closer to the fence if that's what you're looking for.
So as a condition, Counselor, is your client willing to add 2 more customer spots on that right-hand side?
Are you sure? Yes.
Okay, good. So I have a list, a short list, hopefully, here. You talked about the signage. The current sign's going to be removed.
The current sign,
Yep.
the exterior of the
Correct.
sign will be there, but from what I understand, the thrifty will be lifted out
Yep.
That's supposedly on, you push it up and you pull it out, and a comparable sign will be put in place on the same sign board.
Okay. So Joe, when the petitioner decides to come in with their new sign, are they going to come through your department first, and then it'll be determination regarding the signage?
Yep, all signage
Okay,
is
so we don't
reviewed to
really
us.
need to entertain the sign right now.
You don't need to, no.
Okay. All right. Now, if you're successful this evening, you'll need to still have to go to the License Commission, is that correct?
I'm sorry, what?
License Commission, or?
Yes, we still have to go
We'll have to
before the
go there.
License Commission.
Joe, do we need a condition if, depending on what happens this evening, do we need a condition about the License Commission carrying forward or not?
No, it's not necessary.
Okay. Okay, into that. So the handicap ramp, I'll leave that to Dennis. And I know Gary asked about, there's a couple of fences, but the chain link specifically, does that belong to the business next door, the chain link fence?
Does that belong to the Chinese restaurant, or is it out on our lot, or don't we know?
I don't know.
All right. So you're not going to be the owner of the property anyways, correct?
Gonna be the tenant.
Right. So, to me, I would think it would behoove you if the landlord owns that fence, it might be nice to replace that fence or at least do something with it if you're gonna put a new business in there.
We have no objection to, and this is the one you're talking about
Yep.
here that's bent down. I think that my client would absolutely make sure, if, as long as it's on, our property, that can be remedied to look better.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I can condition something that you don't own.
And I don't think that's asking for too much.
Right, yep. What about does the landlord plan on doing anything at all with the existing hot top?
Not to our knowledge, no. And it is not a condition of our lease.
Right, okay. Did you happen to meet with the neighbors at all about moving in there?
No.
Did you have any kind of neighborhood meeting? Okay. All right. All right. Do any other board members have any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I know a couple people asked about like a landscape and a snow storage plan. If they can submit that too, that'd be great.
Right. Well, I have that on here, but as far as the business itself, now, I'm not familiar with Mr. Smith's business in Lowell. Not obviously, but I do know about his two businesses in Chelmsford. Can't say I've been a client, but both properties are very well maintained. I can speak for Chelmsford. I'm not familiar with the facility in Lowell. But the neighbor made a comment about, there's been past auto businesses there. I can't speak for past auto businesses. Are there a lot of automotive on that street? Absolutely. This board has had to entertain probably 3 or 4 since I've been on here. But as far as, coming here for the permit, the only thing that, the number of spots somewhat concerns me, but I think, I would be in favor of granting the special permit and with the number of spaces. But one condition I believe I am going to put in is have a 6-month administrative review, just to make sure, we're going to get through the winter and we'll get through some other things, make sure there's no issues with the neighborhood. I think a good 6-month administrative review is fair and reasonable based on the type of business going in there. I'm sure everyone would like to see Mr. Smith be successful. But I also have a concern with the neighborhood and ensuring that they're happy with a new business in the neighborhood. And I might also encourage Mr. Smith to maybe reach out to the neighborhood and have an open house, or at least talk about, you know, the business in general, and be good neighbors down there.
An administrative review of 6 months
Yep.
would be more than fair.
Sure.
And it will give us the opportunity of exploring the issues that have been raised to see how we can work with them. You know, with an engineer, with a landscape person, to get in there and come back for the 6 months and let you know what we're doing. In light of the questions that you're asking, we will start to explore that, and we will start to come back with it. I think that's fair. In terms of meeting with the neighborhood, that is not going to be a problem. But I don't want to say, in fact, once we get in there, my client is going to do some interior work in the building, you know, inside, setting up the office. When that is done, we would invite the members of the neighborhood in, show them what it is, listen to them, and during that next, like, 5-month period, we would then be able to comply with, to improve on a lot of what we have now.
Okay. So, Council, if you can give me just a couple of minutes, I need to reconvene, talk about conditions at this point, and then we'll come back. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr.
Through you,
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry?
Go
Go ahead,
ahead,
Gary.
Gary.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I do have just one point of interest and concern is, it is going to be a commercial site with employees. What is the trash plan?
We will explore a trash plan. That's never been raised before, so I'm not going to tell you that we have a trash plan. But should we have a trash plan? Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, you're not going to have the amount of trash for a dumpster in a commercial setting, so you'd just be pulling out residential-type, commercial daily trash. So I don't know if it's just going to be placed in a barrel in the basement and transported to another site might be an answer, or...
We have a, you know, that'd probably be a trial. When we
Yeah.
get started, we'd probably take the trash, and I'd probably take it and throw it in the dumpster in North Chelmsford and go home.
Yeah, the only
from there.
concern is that you have exterior barrels and trash outside that then goes onto the lot and then it piles along the fence line. So just as you move forward with your other thoughts, I think that should be addressed as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis?
Through Mr. Chairman, your idea of taking customers off of Middlesex Street and accessing that parking area that's 18 foot wide from the chain link fence to the house, I think opens the door for them parking, I don't know, along that edge there, which I think it's more successful if we can get the customer parking off of Caleb and require maybe that parking on that side of parking space number 14, the additional parking be vehicles that are for sale. Because I do think that once you open the door for parking to come off of Middlesex Street and start directing people to use that you could get more parking there than you want, and maybe more of a mess. Right at a corner like that, I like the idea of people not backing out onto Middlesex Street at corners that close, and
Okay, so,
so I kind of thought that maybe we could increase the parking count of the customer spaces to 3 or 4 by adding more car storage for sale over in that triangular piece.
okay, so what I thought I heard was there was no access at all on this right-hand side.
At the moment, this plan does not provide that.
When I asked about the traffic flow,
Yes.
is there any traffic either coming in off of Middlesex Street, either coming into the site or exiting the site?
No, we don't, because there's actually a curb there.
No.
We don't want any flow there.
Right.
Okay, so we won't be taking cars in here.
No. No cars going in there. There's a sidewalk out here.
So how would we have car parking here?
Well, how do they get in here?
There's access to the cellar here.
Right,
Doesn't
it
allow-
butts out, yep.
So you have to move these cars out.
All right, so would Mr. Yes, go ahead.
I think what Mr. McCarthy's saying is, he'd like to take, instead of having the customers over on the chain link fence, he'd like to maybe, take a few of the,
Right,
I don't know what the numbers are, but.
and that's fine,
If you
that's
took
fine with me.
1, 2,
Yeah.
and you move, well, depending upon which side of the piece of paper you're on here, but if you're facing the building, if you brought one towards Middlesex Street, 2 spots that way, that would, I think that's what you're trying to say. It actually makes a lot of sense, because now the parking's here, wouldn't disrupt the cars.
Sure.
So
And then the 2 spots, you kind of trading 1 and 2 here for 1 and 2 over here.
So
And then
that
you
would
get 4
comply
customers.
with what,
Yeah.
the chairman has requested and more concern for you. So in other words, yes, that would be something that could happen. And quite frankly, they could just drive in off Caleb Street and out off, through. So yes, the answer to that is we would take 1 and 2, relocate them to where you had been talking, sir, about the other 2 spaces.
That actually helps, and
Yeah,
with 2
that's fine.
spots there, now that to the right of the building would be impossible to go.
It'd be
in and out.
impossible for anybody to come in off
It'd be
Middlesex.
Blocked.
Yep, it's fine with me. No. In fact, this is what I thought you were talking about.
Yeah.
Throwing it in front there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, if you give us a couple of minutes and we'll come
Thank
back.
you.
Thank you. Counselor Nyman, you all set? So based on the review this evening by the board and input from also the neighborhood, first of all, I'd like to appreciate the neighborhood people showing up. It's always useful for the board if, even if it's negative responses, we still appreciate you coming up. You live there every day, we don't. So I appreciate you showing up. So if we look at this petition as far as special permit, which the petitioner is here this evening, and the petition is in a regional retail zoning district as opposed to a neighborhood district, even though the neighborhood generally abuts, I guess based on the criteria that the board has to look at and the adverse effect that this business would have on the area, I believe the petitioner, has met the criteria for the special permit to be granted. But I think the petitioner has to understand that, we're going to have a list of conditions that Dennis will read in, which I believe at the end of the day will assist both the petitioner and the neighborhood that we have a successful business and we have a neighborhood that, to whatever respect, I know there's other small businesses on that corridor that the neighborhood might be able to work together with and help one another out. You never know what each party will need. So based on the review this evening, I believe the petitioner has met the criteria. A lot of the criteria doesn't even apply in this respect, but I believe the most important thing is the issue of the adverse effect, and I don't see this as an adverse effect for the retail district. And hopefully we'll have another new business start up in the city of Lowell that's successful. So with that said, I will ask Dennis to read in the conditions. If there's any conditions at all that are being laid out, please interrupt us and we'll discuss it. So could we read the conditions, please?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for the ZB 2015-036 for a special permit with the following conditions. I have 6 conditions here. The first one is to work with the planning department to provide an adequate snow storage on site and landscaping plan along the corner of Middlesex Street and Caleb Street. The second is to provide adequate parking signage directing customers not to park at the north side of the site. Third condition is to add up to 2 more parking spaces for a total of 24 spaces on the site at the northwest corner with the intent of increasing customer service spaces to be obtained at the Caleb Street side. That's 1, 2, 3. Fourth condition is to the special permit is granted upon the acceptance of a 6-month administrative review.
Could you speak up a little bit, Mr. McCarthy?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble.
This special permit is to be granted upon the acceptance of a 6-month administrative review. And then fifth condition is that that one of the conditions is that you'll receive a positive outcome from the license committee. And the last condition is to provide a revised site plan incorporating the above-mentioned conditions.
Did you understand everything? I had trouble understanding you, and maybe it's because of my hearing, but I had no trouble hearing Mr. Frawley, and these are sort of, is there any way that I could go out with you and just come up close and have you read it to me and tell me what it is?
Sure.
Could I Is there a way we could get a copy of it and look at it?
I don't know if
Were
it's
you able
right
to
down
capture
here.
everything, Joe?
Just so we can make sure we do it.
Just so, yeah. I don't want to,
Joe will go through it with your counsel.
Joe, can you do that for us? Okay. Okay, to work with, no problem on that. Adequate parking signage to not, that's Middlesex. Add up to 2 customer space, no problem, yep. Granted upon acceptance, yep. We receive positive approval from license, yes. Submit a revised plan and Mr. McCarthy, I now understand what you said, and we agree with your conditions entirely. And we'd also like to commend you because we never thought of the suggestion that you gave about relocating 2 of the spaces to the area you told us to, and therefore we like that idea, and we're going to incorporate that also. So I thank you very much.
Okay, we're not done.
And I thank all of you very
We're
much.
not done yet. All right, could I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Could I have a roll call?
Mr. Peck,
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Callahan,
Approve the conditions.
Mr. McCarthy,
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Bailey,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Perrin.
Approve with conditions.
Okay, Mr. Smith and Counselor, you've been approved with conditions. Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you all very much, and
Yep,
thanks
you're
for
welcome. Thank you.
tolerating us.
Yep, thank you. Okay, our next matter before us is ZB 2015-37. The petition's a special permit. The applicant is Christopher Glover. The property is located at 48 Epping Street, and the petition's a variance approval for the installation of a new shed within the front yard setback requirements. The project requires a variance approval under Section 5.1 of the zoning ordinance. Mr. Glover. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Yourself, sir?
Very good.
Okay.
Very good.
Well, I thank you, the board, very much for hearing our application. Overall, I think we covered most of the details inside the paperwork that comes with it. But in a grand summary, we believe that a well-thought-out shed that's carefully placed could improve the appearance of our home without nullifying the intent of zoning. Now, there are a lot of considerations at that site, and I tried to address a lot of them. But what happens as we're going through the process, we've been learning a lot more about different various aspects. And so what happens is that we've addressed some of the feedback. And if you guys do have more feedback or other options we can take, we're willing to go with those. But beyond that, what I like to do, though, is the last hearing was pretty long, and perhaps I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. So I want to yield my time to the neighbors who have feedback. And then we can go from there. The one thing I really appreciate about our neighborhood is that a lot of people did come in order to give feedback. And this shows everybody cares about the neighborhood. Whether feedback is good or bad, it's one of the things we like about the neighborhood is people do care. And so I like to yield my time, if that's okay.
Sure, it's your time. Okay, we're going to open it up to the public. Anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? In favor? Sure. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name's Danny Hanson. I live at 87 Stratham Street, which is just in a very, very proximity of his house. And when I met Chris when he moved in the neighborhood, and the thing I found fascinating about Chris is that he's got to be the most hardest working man I've ever seen. He's always doing something to improve his property. Compared to what the property looked like, it was okay. It was a standard looking piece of property before that, but he has made it into a showplace. Every year, something new was going on, we'd have to say, Chris, what are you doing now? You know, it's, the property is a very good, handsome-looking piece of property. He's done some amazing things with the piece of property that he has. It's been showcased in the news and in the papers. He's done a very good job as far as, you know, making it more, more, how do you put it, the more? Environmental friendly, right. Now, as far as the looks go, I have no concerns with it, other than that I approve of everything that he's done. I have to drive by that piece of property every single day, back and forth. When I leave my property, or when I leave Stratham Street, I have to go by it. When I approach Stratham Street, I have to go by it. And when he started building the shed, I looked at it and I said, okay, he's doing something new now. So I asked him, and he told me what he was doing, and I didn't really fully visualize what it would look like until he showed me a rendition of what the finished product would look like. And I thought it was very, very appealing to the eye. Is it different? Yes, it is. It's different than most sheds that you would see. But that's Chris. He doesn't, you know, he does things differently. And, but it's attractive. I don't see it as an eyesore. Other people might see it as an eyesore. And, you know, I get along well with my neighbors. I love all my neighbors, and I even know the people that would probably be against this, and we like them too. We've known them for a long time also. But they have their opinions, we have our opinions, and you know, hopefully we'll still be friends after this. But I don't have a problem with it. I think what he's done with the piece of property, the amount of piece of property that he has, I think he's done a wonderful job with it. And I look forward to seeing it. If you give him the permit, I look forward to seeing the completion, what it looks like. And it looks like it's going to be, it's going to blend in with his house. And I've talked to a few of the other neighbors, and I can't, you know, I don't want to speak for them, but some of them, you know, they're not here. And what that tells me, this is my very first meeting I've ever come to like this, and I'm really amazed at what you guys have to do and what you have to decide. And, you know, and what this tells me, though, when so few neighbors show up for something like this, it just tells me that they don't care. They don't care. I've asked some of them have said they don't care if he builds a shed there. They don't care if he doesn't build a shed there. They just don't care. But some of our neighbors, some of us do care. And if it was ugly, I'd be concerned, but it's not. That's my opinion. So I hope you decide, you know, in his favor. So I'm going to sign this, and I'm going to shut up.
So, what address are you at Stratham?
87.
87?
Yep.
Okay. So you weren't notified by the city, correct?
Wasn't notified by the city, no. I was notified by, I actually saw the cease and desist order on the shed that he was building, and I asked Chris what it was all about, and then he told me. And then I received this package.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, how long have you been a resident of that neighborhood?
87 Stratham Street, 32 years? 20 years. Is it 20 years? Oh, yeah, that's right, 20 years. We're married 32 years. 20 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor? In favor, yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Bill Lowell. Up until this past Thursday,
What's your address, sir?
up until this past Thursday, I lived at 58 Epping Street,
Oh, I'm sorry.
directly across the street from the Chris Gleba family.
Okay.
I don't want to be redundant to Dana's points, but the Gleba family are exemplary neighbors. There isn't a house within 100 yards of this house that hasn't talked to him, sought his advice, borrowed a tool, asked him questions, watched him work. They could not be more outgoing and forthcoming with help for everybody, certainly for our family. I know that he plays by the rules. He is a rule player. You've seen the mail out that he sailed out to I'm guessing that you don't get one like this every week. Maybe you do, but that tells you he's a serious man, and then this is a serious family. He plays by the rules. He thought that the yard on the side of his house was his side yard. It seems reasonable to me. I would think the same. I think if you're not in the zoning business, you might make that same assumption. So he put up his shed. I don't think we get to argue architecture here. I think it does it conform, and it conforms to all of the things. The exception being that it's not in the front, that it's not in the side yard legally. So I'm a big fan of theirs. I think the shed is fine. If the issue of property value should come up, we just sold our house. It was on the market for 19 days. We sold it for the price we wanted, which was significantly more than what we paid for it. We lived across the street from them for 13 years. We know them well. Lastly, it seems like the city of Lowell will want to encourage these kinds of families with young, energy, and hardworking. Kids go to public school, paying their taxes, and terrific neighbors. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to sign this? You want my new address?
That's fine, your current address, sir.
58. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? Opposition? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
My name is Cynthia Hall, and I live at 42 Epping Street in the Catherwood Mill condominiums.
Okay.
The condominiums consist of 4 units. I'm the unit number 4, the largest of the 4. And my property actually abuts the back of his house. This gentleman here said that, he lives at Epping, he's moved to Harvard now. He does not live in the neighborhood anymore. I've been living at 42 Epping Street for 30 years, and it's a very close-knit neighborhood. I have no ill will towards this family, but it seems as though as soon as they moved in, they started this construction, and I believed him because they seemed like such nice people and very friendly, as they had said. And just to give you a little background history, is that I'll try to be quick. First, it started out he was going to do some renovations, and he explained to us that he was going to put just another foot on his roof. My unit is actually a second and third story unit, and it's a wide open space, it's open concept. And so my whole living room is sort of like this with all windows. And then I have a balcony that has 3 bedrooms and a bath up top. So I'm always facing his property. He explained he was going to do some energy construction, whatever, for the house, and we're like, okay. And he was only going to put like a foot higher on the roof. Next thing you know, construction has been going on for 2 years, and now I face an industrial-looking warehouse, is basically what it is. It has no windows. It's industrial siding. The roof went up, 20 feet or 15 feet high. So my whole front of my living room just faces this warehouse. We keep up our property very well. We have a trust, a condominium trust, and we manage the property ourselves. So that was one thing. He did it, I should have looked into it a little bit more. I'm not an engineer. I live alone. And then the next thing was, as soon as he finished the construction, he started with the trees. Now, around my property, there were like 6 maple trees that are probably about 50 years old. And those trees actually provided privacy as well as shade on my roof deck. He insisted, and I don't want to say threatened, but said that if the trees weren't taken down, they were causing him problems with his septic and sewage. So one of our units was being sold, so we had a vote, and they voted, say, okay, let him take the trees down. I basically was in tears over that. So the trees are gone. And then, next thing now, he's building this monstrosity that looks like an air traffic control tower. So Dana may not mind driving by it every day, but he doesn't have to look at it, okay? And it's just, everything he does is with concrete. He's constantly putting in PVC pipes in the ground. I have no idea why PVC pipes are going underneath this playhouse or whatever it is. I know you have a picture of it, but it's about 3 feet wide and 15 feet high. I have no idea how that could be a playhouse. And it's right on the sidewalk. And it's just amazing. I mean, family members and friends that come to visit have asked me, what is that monstrosity out there? And I said, I have no idea. I have no idea what it is. It's just something, it doesn't look like a shed. I've never seen anything like it. And now, he actually had a truck come in and put 50 concrete cinder blocks. And now he's doing something with cinder blocks right next to it. Here's the sidewalk, the fence, and it's right alongside that. And he said it's a flower bed. So I think we've been pretty patient, and I think that, you know, at this point, I value my property, and I wonder what it's going to do to my property value. So I'm against it. And I'd still like to know with all these PVC piping and that kind of stuff, because it's all going towards our parking lot. So I don't know what's going on underground there and why you would need to have piping underneath a shed. So that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Hi.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Thank you for listening to us. I live at 31 Epping Street, 3 houses down from Chris.
Okay.
Yes, when they moved in, they've been doing construction from day one on their property. May I approach you and show you some pictures?
Sure. Yep.
Hand those to you. This can be the other side of the property. I'm going to ask about here because there's foundations, footings, building. He says there's no room for a shed.
Okay. Okay.
He says the shed, there's no room on the other side of his house, where there's only 8 feet. So why is he building foundations with rebar coming up on the other side of his house where he couldn't put a shed? So therefore, he put the shed on the other side of the house. It is a sore eye looking through it when you drive up and down the street every day. And he has no room in the backyard to put his tools and the kids' toys. What are the Joe boxes in the backyard sitting on a foundation? Is that for storage? What's he using those for? And if the shed is if you need a shed for 16 feet tall, why do we need something that high? If he's gonna build a toy area for the kids to play with, is that not gonna be too dangerous if a kid falls out the window on top of the sidewalk, gets hurt, killed? Who's gonna be responsible for that? As a taxpayer, I hate to have to take care of a child who's been injured by falling out of a window of that 16-foot building that close to the sidewalk. And then he's asking about one of the pictures of the diagram he gave us. He's got a ladder coming out of the second floor of the shed. Well, that looks like that ladder's going into the vegetable bin or raised flower bed he's building. So how do the kids go from the bottom floor to the second floor? And he says about different reasonable accessories sit back in our neighborhood. Yes, there are people who have pools where you can see over a pool. You can see through a fence. You can see underneath a decking of a porch, but you can't see through a shed through the neighborhood coming around the corner. That's a few little things. I mean, it's not appealing. I'm worried about my property values. We all raise kids in the neighborhood. There's a park down the street. They can climb on buildings. Structures are down there, been placed down there for the kids to play on. And we all live within, walking distance, houses to go back and forth. What's going to happen when the kids do grow up? What's the structure on the top going to be used for? For teenagers to hang out and drink, have parties? We don't need that in our neighborhood. We're all a close-knit neighborhood. I've been there, living there for 22 years. Raised kids and had grandkids living there. And it's just something, if we let this guy do it, what's going to happen to the next neighborhood? We don't see this in Belvedere, we don't see this in Christian Hill. Why should we start it now in South Lowell? Thank you for your time and help.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Opposition? Opposition. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the board at this point. Van?
Through
Sir,
you,
you might want to come up to the podium, please.
through you, Mr. Chairman, to the applicant. So, Mr. Gleba, there's a lot been said about your property, how it's a construction zone, pretty much today you moved in. It's it's a bit of aesthetically, not traditionally, look-wise, not kind of look of the neighborhood. And it's kind of like, I'll use the terms that the neighborhood use, kind of a warehouse industrial look to it. Can you just address or talk about those comments?
Oh, sure. No, I appreciate that feedback, and I do understand. In fact, one of the things is that we do things a little bit unusually. What happens is most things I do myself. I try to always follow the rules. And what happens, one of the downsides, unfortunately, of doing things myself is usually takes longer than expected. And so I do appreciate that feedback. I understand. The key points is usually, though, is I always complete everything I start. And the second thing is I always try to do it right. Once in a while, I do make mistakes, and I try to correct them. And then usually I learn from my mistakes, too, and don't make the same mistakes again. And overall, even though it does take a long time, we always obey all the rules. We always do things during the daytime. We never do things during nighttime. We try to keep quiet when we can. There is some noise involved, and we try to minimize it. And overall, when we do complete things, they tend to turn out well. And like I said, we won a couple of awards for our work, et cetera. As for the design of the building, I understand that not everybody's going to like it, and we appreciate that. What we did was we tried to keep the same shape. When we did our previous renovations, we tried to keep the same shape of the building. And then what happens, we put on steel siding because it's both recyclable, unlike PVC, and also reminisce of board and batten siding. And so what happens, we kept it a traditional gray. And what happens, due to the shape of the plot, we had to do some fancy things in order to try to minimize the sight lines. You are correct, there are sight line issues from your property. And so what happens, we swoop, well, if we want to go through the past things, we can go through if you wish, but basically try to swoop the roof way down so it wouldn't block views that badly. And as a result, create some sharp lines. So in return, what we did is we took those sharp lines and tried to make it modern looking and put it and sheath it in silver. And that's where we get the sharp look, the sharp new modern look mixed with the traditional look of the neighborhood. And overall, it is divisive. What happens is a lot of people like it, and there's people who I feel don't like it at all. And we do understand that feedback.
I personally, I do appreciate kind of your, futuristic kind of, I want to say modern design. But why I do think that's a nice feature. I do want to see kind of the neighborhood or the character of the neighborhood kind of preserved as well. I appreciate all the neighbors coming out to speak on this petition because, I just thought it was a straightforward shed. But, and I know it's not always an easy thing for neighbors to come to speak in public. So I do appreciate your feedback, and overall, I think, I want to see maybe a better layout or better design or some kind of project that is kind of, a plan that is, I guess, susceptible to all the parties. But,
Oh, sorry, I mean, interrupt. We do appreciate feedback, and as mentioned, we're willing to entertain other designs too.
Okay. Those are all the comments I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Fine.
Thank you, Van. Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Glebe, I looked over the plans, and I appreciate what you're trying to do here, and it seems very, you're very well laid out. And when you got the comments from the board, I really appreciate that you then reassessed the situation and made some other options. And you posed several options. I think what I'm struggling with is, though, is just, I don't know if you have enough room to put any of these things in.
You're right.
As far as, I mean, I know the concerns are, well, you call option A, which would be next to Morton Street. There's problems, obviously, that you saw from the comments from the city that, coming out of the driveway, people seeing it.
Makes
So
sense.
then you go to option B, which is on the other side of your house, but that's bordering right next to the house, right next to the property line, with a back porch that's now, it's kind of taking out an option of, in case of emergency, people getting out of the house, having, trying to get everybody out. So I think these are,
Tough situation.
I really, and again, I mean, I understand what you're trying to do, but for your family and for your children and whatnot, and I appreciate, you have neighbors who are supportive of you and supportive of what you're trying to do, but others who are not. And it's something I gotta be honest, I'm struggling with, trying to see where we're going. And your option C, I think, on the back end.
Yeah.
Then the concerns of the neighbors come into
Yeah, I
effect
don't
too.
like that either.
I don't, if you want to speak, I mean, if you want to.
Oh, okay.
If you have any
Well,
things
what I like to do, the accessibility.
Ease my
yeah.
concerns here.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like-
no, the accessibility feedback is actually a concern I had too. That's actually why we had looked at option A first, because option B actually had a lot of different concerns. And so we try to address most of them. But if you're willing, we can work on the accessibility one more. If you give us a tempt, we might be able to find a solution there. I can't think one off the top of my head, but I appreciate the opportunity to try to find a solution.
Yeah. The one other thing about the second option next to the
Yeah.
front porch, I mean, you had the doors sticking out of the street too, which I found to
Oh,
be
it's in
pretty
swing.
unusual.
Yeah.
That
It is unusual.
looks like can be termed more as a garage, if anything, if you're looking at that one.
Oh, no, it's not possible there at all. Whatever we apply for, we're applying for. We're not applying for anything else. And what happens, there could be a couple options there too. And what happens, I appreciate the opportunity to try to explore, is like, for instance, if you wish, we can inset the door, almost like a storefront where it goes in further. So you have a stoop comes in 3 feet and the door will go in. And that could push it away from the sidewalk even further if you wish.
Well, I mean, at this point right now, I mean,
Okay.
again, I'm still considering it, but having
Yeah.
the board said, what do you think is a better option if the board was to consider that you would prefer, keeping in mind all the comments that you've gotten from the city and what?
Option A is the easy option. I think option B is the better option.
Okay.
Tougher option, though.
And like I said, I'm still
Yeah.
struggling with it a little bit, but I probably would consider option B, but again, then my concerns about the back entrance
Yes.
and, possible, emergency exits and stuff like that.
Oh, well, I have the
again.
same concerns,
Yeah,
trust me.
So I just to let, all right, well, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Dennis?
Quite a challenge.
Well,
Quite a
it is a challenge. It's kind of a neat challenge in a way to try to live as well as you can in a smaller area. And that's one of the challenges we've appreciated, because you tend to live with what you only need.
What is the 8-foot wide side yard used for primarily right now?
Right now it's actually used for nothing. It's kind of unfortunately a wasteland, because we haven't gotten around to renovating or fixing it up yet. What happened is basically we've gone many phases. Like I said, I do most of the work myself. When we moved in, we worked the interior of the house. Then we worked in the exterior. And then we worked in the front yard. And now we'll make our way back over the backyard.
So you call the side yard the backyard?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Our
The
side yard,
8-foot.
technically we have 2 side yards.
Oh, no, right. I'm just trying to, okay.
Yeah.
So your focus is to place the shed in that side yard?
Well,
That's your primary, that's your hope to accomplish?
Well, it's up to the board. Like, so we're open to many options, but the 2 options we outlined were where we started, which is option A, which is right next to Stratham Street, and also option B, which the Development Services brought up as a secondary option, which is over by Upping Street. Does that make sense, or do I bring up the plot?
So the location next to Epping Street, is that what you have here kind of sketched out where it's right up against the sidewalk?
That's correct.
And that wasn't your first choice. Your first choice was,
So initially, when our initial application, the sketch that was up against the sidewalk on Morton Street was the initial application. And what happens, Development Services, as well as the city engineer, gave some feedback. And so what happens, that's where we incorporated their feedback and just said, hey, if you wish, this is another option we can take a look at. And that's the second option.
okay.
Would you mind if I approach? I can point it out, or?
I think I understand it.
Okay.
Why is it so close to the sidewalk on Epping Street? Why is it pushed right up to the edge of this?
Okay, so on the Epping Street side, the tricky part is there's a couple different constraints. We probably could move it back a little bit, and I don't think that would be an issue. But one of the things we're working up against in that area is the utility, whatchamacallit there, power meter on the side of the house. We can't block the power meter. And then in addition, what happens is service lines that come down, we can't go too back far because we'll hit the service lines. And so what happens, it nestled nicely into that corner. And we probably could move it back a little bit, but there's not much room behind that. If we go a little bit too far back, then we block one of the windows to the basement. And
So we couldn't match the building, the home setback? with the shed?
actually, that's not a bad idea. I can explore that. I haven't drawn it out yet, though.
To me, that would at least honor the
Yeah.
structures on the street. And I think it would blend in better.
Yeah, it
but
wouldn't be as imposing. Yeah, I understand that. And actually, that could be pretty good, too, because we could put like a little garden in front of the shed and put like little bushes in there, make it less imposing overall.
Okay. It's very interesting architecture that you're doing here. And I can understand why it's certainly something that is not easy fit for everybody to see in the neighborhood, because it does have a totally different vocabulary for the materials. But you're keeping the massing of the buildings nearby, and you're trying to live as green as possible, which is something that should be, celebrated more. So
Oh, thank you.
it's a conundrum, but I do like the idea of sliding it back to match the building massing in the front as a way of mitigating the situation a bit. But thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of questions. What's the purpose of a two-story shed?
So it's an option. What happens, our overall idea is that we're building at least in the original inception, was we were building a 4-by-6 foot shed to store the kids' bikes. So the idea was, since we were building a shed anyway, when we make a little playhouse from up top for it to be fun. And so the idea was kids' bikes and junk down the bottom, kids up top for fun. And so it's almost like a little fort in the area for the play. And like I said, that was totally optional. That was a secondary thing. We just figured if we're putting in the work anyway, why not make it fun?
Okay, just as it relates to the comments from the city as regards to the sightlines and being
Yeah.
so close to that sidewalk.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Did you see the comments?
Oh, yeah.
As regards to the sightline and the close proximity to the sidewalk?
Oh, yeah, what happens, I'm in contact with the city engineer now, and what happens, we work through the site triangle that we have to put onto the map. And so what happens right now, I'm just getting the last few details on it to figure out whether it fits within the triangle. If it doesn't fit in with the sightline triangle, we have two options. Either A, we can move the shed back a little bit, or B, we can go with the secondary option, which we just discussed, which is put it over by Epping Street.
Well, I'm familiar with the neighborhood, the properties over there. It's a dense neighborhood. Haven't been in that neighborhood since my young days. I noticed it right away. It was a significant improvement from what was there before. I grew up in that neighborhood on the other side of Pine Street, if you will, and that was a ballpark of ours and neighborhood friends. Put a considerable amount of change into that property.
Oh, thank you.
It seems as you were taking into consideration a lot of things. I have a lot of concerns for the height.
Yeah, I can understand that. We can work on that.
When you think of sheds, you think of a one-story building, open concept, utility sheds, storage sheds, things of that nature. I certainly can appreciate your enthusiasm for your young children to have a place to play. But I would be concerned, with the height and the position. I mean, the topography of that lot is, as most lots over there. I actually forgot there was a condominium complex, and I remember when that went in there many years ago, actually, to this date. How long has that condominium complex been there? The condo association?
1854, it was on the wall.
Okay,
Yeah, but it was redone.
right. 80, yeah, I was gonna say late 80s, okay. All right. So there's been some change to the neighborhood, and certainly change you're bringing is conducive to what your type of living is, but I have a difficult time with 2 stories.
I understand.
So I'll listen to see what the chairman and the remaining comments from the board, so thank you.
Well, thank you for your consideration.
Hey, Gary. Joe, this is a variance, right?
That's correct.
Yep, okay. All right. One thing I failed to mention, we did receive a communication from a neighbor in support of the project. They're at 27 Stratham Street. Burl Reed and Paul Cattler. I won't read the whole letter, but pretty much, they've lived in the neighborhood more than 30 years, and they support the petitioner's purpose for being there this evening. So I just wanted to read that into the record. That was dated October 8th, 2015. Okay, so the reason why you're here is you were not ordered, but the city basically notified you that a 2-story structure did not meet code to start with, correct?
It wasn't the structure itself, it was where it was placed. We made a mistake in placing it where it was.
Well, it says 1-story accessory buildings, 2 stories are not allowed up to 120 square feet.
Okay, I
Yep.
apologize, you're correct.
To be placed within the minimum and rear yard setbacks, so, which is 15 feet to begin with. So that's how you ended up
That's correct, sir.
coming before us.
I did make a mistake.
And if we're here for a variance, one of the major criteria for a variance has to do with the shape and size of the lot. And if I look at the shape and size of the lot, and I also took a look at the home prior to you remodeling it, per se, and I noticed, there's that same green space, and there was also some shrubbery and throughout the landscape. So as far as the existing structure you have there right now, it doesn't meet any of the conditions of the variance,
Yes, sir.
okay? So you've also talked about, or there are 2 other alternatives that we're looking at, numbers B and C.
That's correct.
Have you talked about C at all?
I haven't talked about C.
So can you just give me kind of a high-level summary of what would happen with C?
I have to say is C is an option, but it's the option I like the least. What happens, the advantage of C is that's totally on our property and it wouldn't actually affect any sight lines. The other advantage of C2 is that it actually won't be visible from the street at all, so it wouldn't affect any type of opinion about architecture. The disadvantage, though, is it's extremely close to the building right next to us. And what happens, specifically, it'll be less than 10 feet away from our building and the building behind us. So what happens, I'm very concerned about fire in general. That's why we cover our house in Rockwell. I'd be concerned about the fire jumping between buildings. And so what happens, C is definitely an option, and we would like to pursue it. I think we could mitigate the fire risk by covering the building in Rockwell. But in general, if the other 2 options are more viable, I prefer those first. But that's just my opinion. Like I said, I prefer the board's feedback on that too.
Joe, if the petitioner was
Generally for an accessory structure, it's 16 feet, which I think the 2-story structure.
Option B is less stark than option A. Option A is right in the face, right there in the front of the building. Option B is more nestled down, a little bit lower. What happens also, option B is much farther away from the intersection. Option B is 46 feet from the intersection, whereas option A was 18 and a half feet from the intersection. And so we haven't run it by the engineer yet because there's a very short time between his feedback and also this hearing. We will work it through with him, but we think that option B would solve the sightline concerns.
I'm sorry. One of the questions I was going to ask, Joe, did the city even entertain what we're calling option B? I know we received a drawing, what it would look like. Has the city even looked at this, made any comments to it?
Brief, in terms of sightlines, briefly, option C and B wouldn't really have any kind of impact at the intersection in terms of sightlines.
Right. No, I was talking about the actual structure itself. Were there any concerns that the city had with, this is B that we have on the back here, correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
If I can clarify, what happened is we presented option B in more detail because the development services said that the board might want to look at B and C. So we figured we'd give more detail so there'd be something to discuss tonight.
Yep. Well, and that's why I'm asking the question. Has
That
the
makes
city
sense.
really, really reviewed both B and C as far as the structure, or do we need to entertain that?
In terms of design aesthetic, we certainly can. It wasn't something that we had gotten into at this time.
Yeah, because if I look at B, it's not just a, I'll call it traditional shed. You have, looks like you've used some design work again with this. I'll use that term in layman terms, design. So is the intent with B, for instance, to have the same type of concept, storage, and then a play area?
What happens, anything's up for negotiation, but that was the initial intent. And what happens with the design overall, we're willing to go more traditional, but what our point was we were trying to match the house overall. And so, like I said, your feedback is definitely appreciated in general. Does that make sense, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can only go on what I've been handed,
Right,
and I'm
right.
trying to, for a project like this, for a shed, and don't take this the wrong way, we have an awful lot of stuff we've had to take a look at. I will say one thing, I appreciate all the commentary that you provided. I'll speak for myself, we generally don't get this type of overview on a project, so it's much appreciated. You've given a lot of thought to this. There's been some comments I know from the neighbors that are here over the structure of your main house. That's not why this gentleman's here this evening. Whatever happened with the main house has nothing to do with this board. We're only here for the accessory structure. I don't see working the way it was designed, the location, the city engineer with his comments about the sidelines. I know when I drove the property, I drove it from many angles, and I was surprised there was even a parking back, so I'm not noteworthy of the area as Gary was, but I noticed, it's a fairly large park and back, and I was pleasantly surprised. I think if I lived in that neighborhood and had children, I thought it was a great spot, because it's kind of off the beaten path, but I'm not trying to sell the park and not sell the intent of what you wanted to do, but I took notice of the intersection. I can honestly say, I think if you're driving at a correct speed in that neighborhood, you kind of see the shed. It's not like you don't see it, and the engineer's comment is coming up Epping and taking a left on the Morton seemed to be where more the sideline, or if you're coming out Morton, but I just don't see the structure existing because of a variance.
I understand.
You're not going to meet that criteria. So, Joe, do we need, since we don't really have any comments from the city for either B or C, can we get the city to at least do a review of that? I'd like to at least get some comments from the city. And that doesn't mean you can't come back with, you know, a revision, or if you want to work with them, if there's any comments that they have.
Oh, I welcome working with it. In fact, what happens is we want to get the right design. That's why we basically came up with option B. And so I appreciate the opportunity to work with them.
Okay.
Sure, we can provide comments on options B and C.
So as far as, and again, you know, as I tell petitioners, I'm not trying to belabor this and push it off forever, but can this be accomplished by the next meeting, or do we need 2 meetings?
We can do it by the next meeting, sure.
Yep, okay. So, sir, what I would strongly recommend that we do is we continue this to our next meeting, which is the November 9th, correct, Joe?
That's correct, yep.
Yeah, to November 9th. Now, does option C, have you provided anything to the city on that?
I haven't, but I can.
Okay. So I would probably say the sooner you can do that, the more time it gives them. And Joe, again, speaking for the board, appreciate as quick as comments as we can get before the meeting, instead of getting them the night of the meeting and then having to plow through it. That'd be appreciated. But if things can't be accomplished, and I tell people this too, if it can't be accomplished in 2 weeks, we'll put it off to the meeting after that. But
Okay,
I want to be fair to you and also fair to the city, that they have time to invest to review the plans.
Oh, more time in this particular case would probably be better than less, because we're not going to do any construction during the winter. And so if you wish more time, we have no problem with that whatsoever.
Well, we'll plan for the next meeting on
Okay.
November 9th. If for some reason either party has an issue, then we can entertain it at that point. All right, sir?
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from any board members? Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
suggest, I'm not sure if the plans that we were provided from the shed were related to option A, and I'll suggest to the applicant if there's any changes or anything to the actual plans of the shed dimensions themselves, or to provide revised plans.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Because try to get a feel for like the footage we're working with, the differing amounts from B and C. Because
Oh, definitely.
what we got recently didn't. It was a nice drawing, nice rendering, but
Oh, yeah, what happened?
Get a picture of the square footage and all that area.
Oh, yeah, what happened was we actually intended to do a full design, but there was only like, I think, 4 days between the feedback and this meeting, so we only got a chance to get to the sketch.
No, but I'd like to see the dimensions as pertains to the other 2 options as well.
Excellent, okay, will do.
Thanks, Sean. So could I have a motion, please?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2015-037 for variance at 48 Epping Street to be continued to November 9th.
Have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Peck?
Continue to November 9th.
Mr. Callahan?
Continue to November 9th.
Mr. McCarthy?
Continue to November 9th.
Mr. Bailey?
Continue?
Mr. Perrin?
Continue to November 9th.
All right, Mr. Kleber, you've been approved to continue to November 9th.
Okay, thank you. I
We'll see you
appreciate the
then.
board's
All right,
consideration.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep, have a good evening.
Good luck.
And thank you to the neighborhood for showing up this evening. Appreciate that. Okay, any other comments from any other board members? So next meeting, November 9th, and could I have a motion to adjourn?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
Second.
So moved.